challenge, let's see.
Biggest challenge. Had to overcome it.
Probably just scheduling everything. That's always my biggest challenge. I'll have a perfectly laid out schedule, one project after the other, and then they all want to happen at the same time. So I feel like that's in my job, is just juggling the ever constant, and especially now, the strike is pushing a bunch of things, moving things around. Yeah.
How has that affected everything?
Not until now. I've been pretty busy up until now, and it's first. I've had 2 shows now that I've pushed or put on hiatus now. But it's kind of a welcome break. I've been really busy up until the first half of this year. So for now, it's okay. Hopefully, it doesn't go on too long. Hopefully, the producers budge eventually. So yeah.
So I would like to ask about Diablo IV, if I could.
Sure.
Long production house. We were told in the game media about this thing years ago. I just finished it about a month ago. Long game, lots of stuff. How long did it take you to write that just enormous volume of music for that thing?
Well, me, I was an engineer on the project, mixing engineer. So I think I had like a 10-day mix on that, which is pretty long for most projects. And I worked on about 2 hours and 13 minutes. Most of the boss battles and all the cutscenes are mostly things that I mix. And then my friend, the lead composer Ted Reedy, told me there's another like 6 hours of music that I didn't even see. So the whole game I think has like 7 to 8 hours of music, which is just insane.
Yeah.
Especially when you compare it to films that, a big film will usually have 80, 90, maybe 100 minutes of music. So to have, 7 times that amount is just a huge undertaking.
Yeah, it definitely sounded, not only does it sound great, but I'm just like, there were times I'm playing it going, my goodness, and I'm still not even touching all the possible options on this thing, and I'm still going.
It's a big one for sure.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll have a fun soundtrack release too.
So how has the technology changed things?
Not a ton since I started in the industry in 2010, and by then we were already pretty much fully digital. In college I took some classes on, like analog tape production, which was fun, more as a history lesson than anything. It's allowed us to work faster. Like when we were recording Picard at Warner Brothers, I loved talking to the crews there that had been there for 20, 30 plus years, and then telling me what it was like back when recording orchestra on analog tape, and we'd have a 35mm projector going, and everything was just slower. Like, to do every take, they had to reel back all the machines and then wait for them to sync together, and then they could start recording. Whereas now, with computers and Pro Tools, we're rapid fire. We can just move through things super fast, which has its ups and downs. We can get more done, but then again, sometimes the musicians don't get as much of a break as they'd like to in between cues. They get their union 10-hour break every hour, which is good. But yeah, I think it's just really speed and efficiency, which we always had to push back to try not to get taken advantage of. Even though we can do things faster, it's not always better to do it faster.
So original score versus like digital music. How do you mix the two? What do you do?
The score is really, not only do we have to have the music stand on its own for the most part, especially if it's a cue that's going to go on the soundtrack, but we have to be aware of what's going on in the show. So what's going on with dialogue and sound effects and how it's going to interplay with those things. So when I'm mixing, I always have a rough dialogue and sound effects track, so I'm aware of what's going on in the scene, and I always have picture running as well, so I know what's going on. So I'm trying to balance between making it a piece of music that you might want to listen to on its own, but also work within the scene and sort of the sonic landscape of the project.
Okay. You got something?
Oh, I've got several between Picard and Are you able to ask something about Twisted Metal?
Probably some. Yeah, I think it's come out in like a week. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, mainly about the mixing for that, because again, the prior music was all in a video game, and this is the essentially bold reimagining of the that must have been a real challenge.
Yeah, Zach and Leo wrote a really incredible score. I've worked with them on all the seasons of Cobra Kai, and then recently the Weird Al movie. So that was a kind of a different. Some of the music is like harkened to maybe some of the action scenes in Cobra Kai, but definitely much more electronics and much more sort of hybrid elements like you probably would have heard in the video game. And so I was trying to remember. I think I finished that a few months ago. But yeah, really, really fun show.
Perfect. Thank you.
So how did you get started in this business? What was your first gig? What was that like?
When I first moved here, I'd grown up playing music, loving music production, wanted to be a composer for a little while and realized that my forte really was music production and engineering and mixing. So before I moved out to LA in 2010, I emailed every score mixer I could find contact info for, which back then was maybe like 5. This is before everybody was on Facebook and things like that. You couldn't find people as easily. A couple of them got back to me, and only this one guy, Greg Townley, got back to me and said, like, hey, when you get here, like, give me a call and we'll chat and I'll, give you some advice or whatever. And I just got lucky that within the first few days of moving to LA, I went and had coffee with him at a studio, and he just happened to be an assistant. So he put me in front of his Pro Tools rigs and showed me a session, asked me to tell him what I thought I saw, and he thought it was proficient enough and hired me on the spot as his assistant. So that was my first gig, working on some movie. He's Rolf Kent's engineer, so I worked on like Killers and Charlie St. Cloud were the first 2 movies I worked on, assisting Greg while he recorded and mixed the music. So then after that, I was kind of moving between different people, and everyone I think says their first couple years in LA is pretty tough, especially now.
It's pretty tough,
Yeah.
What have you learned in this business that truly surprised you?
I mean, honestly, when I first moved out here, everyone wants to work on the biggest, highest budget, most expensive, crazy things. But as I get older and more, experienced in the industry, you start to value more the people you work with. So I almost rather work sometimes on projects that maybe aren't quite as glamorous on the front, but that have just great teams of people to work with, because that's really what makes life better. When you have good people that treat you well, that are doing their work on a really professional, high level, it just makes everything go easier.
You guys always kind of work with the same group. Have you found that?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, I think all of us kind of have our key clients. I have maybe 2 or 3 clients that are, maybe 80% of my work, and then other people find me online on social media, or they see that I've worked on other things, and things kind of shift around that way. But it's a small industry. It's the music scoring field isn't really not a whole ton of people. So once you know a few people, you kind of are 1-2 connections away from almost everybody.
Is there a genre you prefer?
I mean, really, Picard was kind of like the dream come true stylistically, because I grew up loving film music in the 90s, and that's kind of like, we had a huge influence of that sound. And then getting to record big orchestra in LA, I mean, those musicians are just otherworldly incredible. So, I mean, in a lot of ways, it was actually an easy gig just because everybody was working at such a high level. It's easy to get a good sound. We have good equipment. We're in a great studio, amazing musicians. Steven and Freddie wrote incredible music. But that sound, that's definitely what I grew up loving and wanting to get in this industry for.
Doing what you love and getting paid for it. Wow.
Yeah, exactly.
American dream right there.
Yeah, blessed for sure.
Wow. I'm done.
I'm good, actually. Thank you.